All at once, he realised it was this. She was the most beautiful person he had ever seen. With stars in her eyes and veils in her hair and cyclamen and wild violets. What nonsense was he thinking? She was 50 at least. She had 8 children. Stepping through fields of flowers and taking to her breast buds that had broken and lambs that had fallen, with stars in her eyes and the wind in her hair. He took her bag. For the first time in his life, Charles Tansley felt an extraordinary pride. A man digging in a drain stopped digging and looked at her, let his arm fall down and looked at her. Charles Tansley felt an extraordinary pride, felt the wind, felt the cyclamen, felt the violets, for he was walking with a beautiful woman for the first time. He had hold of her bag. Hello, my name's Rebecca Morden. I run Scary Little Girls Theatre Company with a lot of other fantastic women and people. And I have been working this summer on something called the Salon de la Vie. And it's a little mini Salon de la Vie that I'm going to do for you now about the fantastic Virginia Woolf, to support the idea of her having the very, very important idea of getting her own statue. How fantastic would that be? We just heard a little bit of from To the Lighthouse. In my salons, I basically mix together drinking, which I think the Bloomsbury set would have approved of, and storytelling and a bit of music to basically amplify some fantastic woman each time. So it's really exciting to do that about Virginia Woolf now. I love, obviously, To the Lighthouse. It's not set in Cornwall, but it's very inspired by it, and I'm Cornish, so that's exciting for me. But I also really love and feel a massive resonance with the first piece of Virginia Woolf's writing that I actually came across, which was A Room of One's Own. Very different in tone, but I'm going to read you an extract from that now, because I think it's still hugely prescient, and it's such a lovely example of the wit and wiles of the wolf. I thought of that old gentleman, who's dead now, but was a bishop, I think, who declared it was impossible for any woman, past, present, or to come, to have the genius of Shakespeare. He wrote to the papers about it. He also told a lady who applied to him for information that cats, as a matter of fact, do not go to heaven, though they have, he added, souls of a sort. How much thinking these old gentlemen used to save one. How the borders of ignorance shrank back at their approach. Cats do not go to heaven. Women cannot write the plays of Shakespeare. But be that as it may, I cannot help thinking, as I looked at the words of Shakespeare on the shelf, that the bishop was right in at least this. It would have been impossible, certainly and entirely, for any woman to have written the plays of Shakespeare in the age of Shakespeare. Let me imagine, since facts are so hard to come by, what would have happened had Shakespeare had a wonderfully gifted sister, called Judith, let us say. Shakespeare himself went, very probably, his mother was an heiress, to a grammar school, where he may have learnt, he would have learnt Latin, Ovid, Virgil and Horace, and the elements of grammar and logic. He was, it is known, a rather wild boy who poached rabbits and perhaps shot a deer, and had, rather sooner than he should have done, to marry a woman in the neighbourhood who bore him a child rather quicker than was right. That escapade sent him to seek his fortune in London. He had, it seemed, a taste for theatre. He began by holding horses at the stage door. Very soon he got work in theatre, became a successful actor, and lived at the hub of the universe, meeting everybody, knowing everybody, practising his art on the boards, exercising his wits in the street, and even getting access to the palace of the Queen. Meanwhile, his extraordinarily gifted sister, let us suppose, remained at home. She was as adventurous, as imaginative, as agog to see the world as he was, but she was not sent to school. She had no chance to learn grammar or logic, let alone read Horace and Virgil. She picked up a book now and then, one of her brothers perhaps, and read a few pages. But then her parents came in and told her to mend the stockings or mind the stew and not moon about with books and papers. They would have spoken sharply but kindly, for they were substantial people who knew the conditions of life for a woman and loved their daughter. Indeed, more likely than not, she was the apple of her father's eye. Perhaps she scribbled some pages up in the apple loft on the sly, but was careful to hide them or set fire to them. Soon, however, before she was out of her teens, she is to be betrothed to the son of a neighbouring wool stapler. She cried out that marriage was hateful to her, and for that she is severely beaten by her father. Then he ceased to scold her. He begged her instead not to hurt him, not to shame him in this manner of her marriage. He would give her a chain of beads. He would give her a fine petticoat, he said. And there were tears in his eyes. How could she disobey him? How could she break his heart? The force of her own gift alone drove her to it. She made up a small parcel of her belongings, let herself down by a rope one summer's night, and took the road to London. She was not 17. The birds that sang in the hedges are not more musical than she was. Oh, she had the quickest fancy, a gift for words like her brothers, for the tune of them. Like him, she had a taste for theatre. She stood by the stage door. She wanted to act, she said. Men laughed in her face. The manager, a fat, loose-lipped man, guffawed. He bellowed about poodles dancing and women acting. No woman, he said, could possibly train as an actress. He hinted. You can imagine what. She could get no training in her craft. Could she even seek her dinner at a tavern or roam the streets at midnight? Yet her genius for fiction was lusting to be fed abundantly upon the lives of men and women, to study their ways. At last, for she was very young, oddly like Shakespeare, the poet in her face, with the same grey eyes and rounded brows. At last, Nick Green, the actor-manager, took pity on her. She found herself with child by that gentleman, and so who shall measure the heat and violence of the poet's heart when caught and tangled in a woman's body? Killed herself one winter's night and lies buried at some crossroads where the omnibuses now stop outside the Elephant and Castle. That, I think, is more or less how the story would run, I think, if a woman in Shakespeare's day had had Shakespeare's genius. Woke up this morning and the streets were full of cars, all bright and shining like they'd just arrived from Mars. And as I stumbled through last night's drunken debris, the paper boy screamed out the headlines in the street. Another war and now the pound is looking weak. And tell me, have you heard about the latest freak? We're bingo numbers and our names are obsolete. Why do I feel bitter when I should be feeling sweet? Hello, hello, turn your radio on. Is there anybody out there? Help me sing this song. La la la, life is a strange thing. Just when you think you've learned how to use it, it's gone. Woke up this morning and my head was in a daze. A brave new world had dawned upon the human race. But words are meaningless and everything's surreal. Gonna have to reach my friends to find out how I feel. And if I taste the honey, is it really sweet? And do I eat it with my hands or with my feet? Does anybody really listen when I speak? Or will I have to say it all again next week? Hello, hello, turn your radio on. Is there anybody out there? Help me sing my song. La la la, life is a strange thing. Just when you think you've learned how to use it, it's gone. Let's bloody get her that statue. I'm going to donate, you donate. It's going to be awesome.